We begin this news hour in Niger, where the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria has met coup leaders in the capital, Niamey. The meeting between the 14th Emir of Kano, Lamido Sanusi, and the junta leaders came after Nigeria's generals refused to receive a delegation from the US, UN, and the African Union. Time coup leaders are accusing French troops of carrying out a plan to destabilize the country. They say a French aircraft had breached their airspace. Diplomatic efforts are intensifying to reinstate deposed and detained President Mohamed Bazoum. But the coup leaders remain defiant. Members of the West African bloc ECOWAS will meet on Thursday to discuss the situation. The US says it remains hopeful diplomacy can work.
I think it's very unfortunate, and it is in keeping with the message that we heard from them yesterday when Acting Deputy Secretary Nuland presented options for a diplomatic path forward and a negotiated process going forward, and they were not willing to take that path at this time. We're going to keep trying, again, fully recognizing how difficult that path is. We have made very clear to the leaders of the junta that there will be consequences with respect to the assistance that we provide them if they don't return to a constitutional order.
For more on this, let's bring in the Rise special correspondent Karl Bostic, who has been following developments from London. Karl, good to see you. It's now 2 weeks since the military takeover, and this latest incident showing how defiant the junta is, and yet the US is still calling for diplomacy to reverse the coup. Does that really seem possible or realistic at the moment?
Well, we're seeing a lot of mixed messages right now in terms of defiance and conciliation, because you need to keep in mind there are different audiences that the coup leaders are talking to. When it comes to talking about a French plane in going into Niger airspace, that's for the local audience, and it's stoking a narrative that the French are always trying to interfere in meddling, even though no evidence has been presented. However, when it comes to showing the Emir of Kano, Khalifa Sanusi, meeting with the coup leader, General Chiani, that's really significant, Soleimani. It's significant because since Thursday, no one's been able to meet with them in terms of international delegations. An ECOWAS delegation arriving Thursday, getting no further than the airport in Niger, in the capital, and being turned away. They left empty-handed, without even going into the city. You also had yesterday a joint delegation made up of ECOWAS, UN, and AU officials, trying to go into Niger, trying to meet with General Chiani, and being rebuffed. Monday, you have the number 2 State Department official, Acting Deputy Secretary Victoria Nuland in Niger, wanting to meet with President Bazoum, wanting to meet with General Chiani, and being rebuffed. And in fact, she said, we offered to even mediate, to find a way to resolve this peacefully. And instead, it fell on deaf ears. She said, we hope they will think about what we offered, because there are serious consequences. Those consequences were warnings. So now you've got the Emir of Kano, Khalifa Sanusi, meeting with him, and this is rare. He's the first person to meet with the leader of the coup. And what does that tell you? It shows a number of things. Number one being that the coup, leaders, the junta, they still maybe are looking for a way to legitimize their control and to consolidate popular support by showing that they are open to dialogue, but dialogue on their terms. Dialogue, as long as President, for example, Bazoum is still healthy and safe, which he is, even though under much more difficult conditions. And now you've got the Emir, and he's not, I don't believe, officially an envoy of ECOWAS. But it shows also, quite frankly, that when it comes to any breakthrough, it's going to come from Nigeria, because that's the most influential, most powerful player when it comes to ECOWAS. It's the major, border of Niger. Nothing changes or moves forward without Nigerian involvement. And that's why it's significant that the Emir of Kano is meeting with him, because if there's going to be a peaceful outcome, it'll come through Nigeria, that's now leading ECOWAS, and this could be a real positive outcome.
So, Karl, what more do we know about President Bazoum's condition?
It's pretty dire, actually. It depends on its day-to-day. I mean, just a few days ago, it was being reported that, as you know, electricity has been cut in Niger. Nigeria supplies 70 to 75% of all electricity to Niger. So there are rolling blackouts in Niger. Electricity has been cut off to the presidential residence where President Bazoum and his family, that's his wife and son who's in his 20s, are now residing. That's what they've been held as he would call it, as a hostage since the coup 2 weeks ago to this day. And apparently it's being reported that there's no food being supplied to them. They're living off canned goods and dried pasta, but no electricity. On Saturday, it was reported that even his SIM cards were taken away from him, President Bazoum. However, somehow miraculously, he was able to speak with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken yesterday. So obviously, I think it's important. They want to show that he's healthy, alive, and safe, but on their terms, because he may be the ultimate bargaining chip for whatever gets resolved between the junta coup leaders and the region and the international order, so to speak. But it's pretty dire when you think about it. When he's not even getting electricity, there's no food, there's no water since last Friday.
Well, Karl, let's see if we can do this in a minute. You know, this is becoming a showdown between the junta leaders and ECOWAS, and so far it seems to be calling their bluff, talking about the junta. President Tinubu has called for a second summit here in Abuja, which he will chair tomorrow. What's at stake now for President Tinubu and ECOWAS, and what are their options?
Very simply, a lot's at stake. I mean, President Tinubu, he's the rotating chair. He took charge of ECOWAS beginning of July. He said his priority was to make sure there are no more coups ever again, because there have been 5 in the last 3 years between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea. 5 in all, so to speak. This would be the 6th. He says we should not show that we're just nothing but toothless bulldogs. So that's why initially he was saying that, you know, all options on the table, including use of military force. However, ECOWAS, they don't really have the coordination to deploy all members at once. So far, only Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire or the Ivory Coast have signed on to contribute troops. If there was a ground invasion, Sulaiman, it would take weeks to coordinate that together. So the staging ground would be from maybe the Nigerian border, which is 1,000 miles long, but that would take some time. There could be a special operations force, much more limited, which would be a surgical strike inside the capital to rescue him, but there could be casualties, and even the president's life could be threatened. Then finally, the whole idea of a counter coup. We're now seeing a message from a former opposition leader by the name of Risa Al-Bak, announcing the formation of a movement to resist the coup, a counter coup, saying that we support ECOWAS and whatever support we can give, we would like to make ourselves available. It's important because he represents the nomadic tribes in the north of Niger, the Tuareg tribes, and without whose support, the military junta simply cannot survive. So this is significant that we can now see a counter coup in the motion, and that may be an option for them to succeed. And finally, the sanctions themselves. They're now kicking in. Electricity has been cut off, 70% of it going to Niger. Prices are skyrocketing because the borders and airspace are closed. You know, prices have gone up for rice 40% at least. So this is really a big deal, but I think a military intervention is very unlikely. Niger, a country twice the size of France, or in the U.S., the size of Texas, it's difficult to imagine ECOWAS going in and try to really intervene militarily. That's why the visit by the Emir of Kano is a good positive sign, and they will look to this as a solution, but one that's led by the Nigerian President Tinubu.
Well, Karl Bostic, many thanks for expanding this for us.